Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 5th November 2023. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. HARDAN, 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 Haribol, TRSV, Nectar, NECTAR, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in all my previous videos. So kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous, present, and past or future videos. So let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. In the past few videos, we have been trying to analyze in detail the three factors which are required by every human living entity, whether male or female, to complete his or her purpose or goal in life in a particular lifetime. In that process, we all know that when the super soul comes in touch with the material world envelopes that super soul or spirit soul with four layers of material body. These are known as the first layer of causal intelligence and logic, the second layer of astral mind, feelings and emotions, the third layer of etheric body of senses, and the fourth gross body made up of four elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth. This etheric body of five senses are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. When this spirit soul is enveloped into a cocoon of these four layers of material body, then it changes its own identity and becomes a living entity. The moment it becomes a living entity, it begins to acclimatize itself to this material world. No more is its spiritual world working with it. the spirit soul is now a part of the material world. Once it happens, this living entity has to go through a long process before it gets into a rut of endless chain of births and deaths in several species in this material world. Among those species, finally, the same living entity gets birth as a human soul. Even in humans, there are 400,000 human species. This particular living entity has to go through at least 50% of these births in its own endless journey through this material world. Once this happens, and its karma and destiny guides it towards self-realization, this person finally, after a very, very long time, gets from material to a spiritual bent of mind. That is the beginning of its journey in the spiritual path to get self realized, liberated from this endless cycle of birth and death in the material world, and finally deliverance as a fully evolved soul to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is one cycle which every human living entity, whether male or female, has to pass through the moment the spirit soul, that is the real identity of that particular living entity, gets enveloped in this cocoon of four layers of material body. During the time when this particular living entity gets a human birth, along with that, sooner or later, after a few births or even before, advertently or inadvertently, by default or by design, due to choice or due to necessity or according to the guidance from the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world, this particular living being usually gets an assignment to complete in this material world. This assignment is based on several factors, including the memories, destiny, karma, taste, preference, surrounding, atmosphere, background, whims, and fantasies of that particular living entity. There is no exception to this rule. Every human living entity, whether male or female, sooner or later gets a purpose to complete. Initially, these purposes may be so simple that one may complete them in one or two lifetimes. But later on, as this particular living entity becomes more and more evolved, the complexity and importance of that purpose increases, and it may take several lifetimes for one living entity to complete a purpose in life. We have already delved deep into this particular part. In this process, we came across several human living entities case studies which analyzed this factor of purpose in life and the completion of purpose in life. We all know that to succeed in completing or reaching some level in the journey of completing their purpose in life, this particular living entity has to go through three very, very important factors. According to the iconic and legendary Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte of France of the 19th century, these three factors are limitless ambition, ceaseless industry, and a determination to succeed in achieving that particular purpose or level of journey to achieve that purpose in life for that particular living entity. In other words, a living entity has to have an extension of that purpose totally sewed into his or her own psyche to such an extent that it becomes an extension of life for that particular living entity, and so this person slowly but steadily begins to focus only on that particular purpose as his or her bull's eye and goal in life. Only when that living entity does that can he or she boast of making some progress in the journey to achieve that particular purpose in life. Usually, such purposes are material, but 25% are different from material. Even among them, only 5% are spiritually inclined. We have already discussed the case histories about people who had a material purpose and for which they applied these three factors to achieve their purpose. But in the past yesterday's video and from then on, we are trying to discuss case histories about those who had a spiritual purpose. Only when a particular individual living entity, whether male or female, has completed his or her material journey in this material world can he or she embark on a journey in the spiritual side in this life. It is one journey which may lead this living entity towards self realization, liberation, and deliverance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an evolved soul. Today we shall discuss such a case history. There was one particular person called Pranabananda. This was this man's real name when he was born. He had been christened Pranabananda. Not much is known about his or his actual childhood, babyhood, etc. But one thing we all know that as soon as this person reached his adolescence or teen age, he came close to one self-styled monk and heretic who thought that he knew everything about spirituality. Nevertheless, Pranabananda got gravitated towards this particular self-styled monk who, under the pretext of falling into ecstasy in love and devotion for God or the Supreme, got addicted to an intoxicant called opium. This particular self-styled monk was addicted to opium. This boy, who was a teenager and a disciple and an ardent devotee of this guy, soon fell into that person's spell, and he started getting addicted slowly to opium. This made this boy a complete slave of that heretic. So much so that when this particular heretic wanted to smoke hashish or opium, this boy used to fill this man's chillum or local type of clay pipe with opium for this particular guru to enjoy and smoke. One day, as destiny could lead Pranabananda, this guy, Pranabananda, suddenly realized that he was going nowhere following this particular heretic. Abruptly, one day, Pranabananda outgrew this guru and so he left him. At that time, one very genuine spiritual teacher called Lahiri Mahashaya, who was teaching a form of meditation called Kriya Yoga, came in touch with Pranabananda. Pranabananda found that this person was really genuine, and so he became this Lahiri Mahashaya's one of the several disciples. After this, Pranabananda began his own genuine spiritual journey by practicing Kriya Yoga and meditation at home. During this time, he came across one person called Mr. Vibhuti Charan Ghosh, who was the vice president of the Calcutta or Bengal Nagpur Railways in India during the colonial British period. Pranabananda became an employee in that railways. He was not very qualified, and so he got only a job as a clerk in the railways. However, it was a government job, and so Pranabananda did not have any trouble getting a regular income. But even during this time, he continued his own spiritual journey and began meditating or continued to meditate through Kriya Yoga for his own salvation. One day, when he and Mr. Vibhuti Charan Ghosh were going home from their office through a rice field, Pranabananda requested his boss, Vibhuti Charan, who was walking alongside him, to give Pranabananda leave so that he could go and visit his own genuine spiritual guru, Lahiri Mahashaya in Banaras. Vibhuti Charan Ghosh scoffed at this. He said, Pranabananda, now that you have got a government job, just concentrate on your material life. Don't bother about such silly, immature ambitions as meditation and Kriya Yoga. Pranabananda was extremely pained, but he could say nothing to his own boss at the time. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the image of Lahiri Mahashaya appeared in the midst of that field and addressed Vibhuti Charan Ghosh, who was almost an atheist till then. Vibhuti, you are being very unkind to your junior. Please give him permission to visit me in Banaras as soon as possible. After saying this, the image vanished. Even Vibhuti Charan Ghosh was stunned. He knew that facts are stranger than fiction many a time, but this time he was watching it face to face for the first time. Both these gentlemen walked along silently, and then Vibhuti Charan Ghosh told Mr. Pranabananda, your teacher, your spiritual teacher, Lahiri Mahashaya, does not know my name, let alone my identity. This is the first time that he was addressing me or I was looking at his face. I am surprised that this man knew my name, my identity, the fact that I was your superior, and he chastised me for being so atheistic. I give you permission to travel to Banaras, and I assure you that today, at this moment, I have changed from rank materialism to spiritualism. My wife is already a disciple of Lahiri Mahashaya, who she goes and visits regularly. I hope to join her in that particular exercise someday or the other. Pranabananda was extremely impressed. He went to Banaras and fell at the feet of Lahiri Mahashaya, who smiled at him benignly and asked, has Vibhuti changed? Pranabananda was speechless. He could not imagine what he was hearing. Lahiri Mahasaya was sitting in his home in Banaras, and he had somehow appeared in the fields of rice in Bengal and chastised Vibhuti. This impressed Pranabananda no end. Mr. Pranabananda used to work as a clerk in the railways in the morning and meditate all night at home every day. This exercise made him lose his own sleep, and so he started becoming more and more tired, fatigued, and weak. One day he went to the Western European English boss and told him this whole process is very taxing, as a result of which I am not able to concentrate on my meditation or my work as a clerk. Here we will take a detour. Pranabananda inadvertently or advertently was slowly trying to focus on his own purpose in life, as Napoleon had mentioned in his words 2 centuries ago. Pranabananda probably had this focus inbuilt into him, as a result of which, without his own knowledge, his own spiritual journey and its purpose had been entwined into his own genes even before he was born. Probably he had that purpose in his own memories or past births too. He had also probably started with A in his spiritual journey and reached this level in this particular birth as Pranabananda. When this man applied for retirement, this Westerner, this Britisher, genuinely appreciated Brahmananda's honesty, divinity, and his own focus towards his spiritual path, and so he retired Brahmananda with a generous pension so that this man could concentrate on his own spiritual journey. Pranabananda was so impressed with Lahiri Mahasayas appearing in two different cities at that same time that he also began meditating through Kriya Yoga on the Supreme to such an extent that he himself got evolved enough to acquire the same type of talent. This has been vowed by none other than Swami Yogananda Paramhamsa, who was the son of Vibhuti Charan Ghosh and the founder of Yogoda Satsang Society of India. Swami Yogananda Paramhamsa has written a chapter on the life of Pranabananda as the saint with two bodies. Pranabananda showed this to Swami Yogananda Paramhamsa when this Yogananda went to meet Pranabananda as a teenager called Mukund Lal Ghosh, which was the original name of Swami Yogananda Paramhamsa. Mr. Mukund Lal Ghosh had taken an errand and a message from his own father, Vibhuti Charan Ghosh, to be delivered to Mr. Pranabananda in Banaras and requested that Pranabananda should deliver it to some another person to whom Vibhuti Charan Ghosh had addressed that message. Swami Yogananda Paramhamsa or Mukund Lal Ghosh describes how, while Pranabananda and his stout body was firmly placed in a particular pedestal in the room of that Banaras house on meditation, Pranabananda's eyes screwed up and started searching into the city of Banaras till it spotted that particular person for whom this message was addressed. Suddenly, Pranabananda, though he was sitting there meditating, appeared in front of that particular person in the Banaras city and delivered that message to that stunned person who promised her, who insisted that Pranabananda, who was sitting in a room in his own house in Banaras, in front of Mukundlal Ghosh had simultaneously appeared as Pranabananda in front of that particular stranger who was in some place in the Banaras city at the same time. Anyway, the message was delivered and the answer given by that particular person to Mr. Vibhuti Charan Ghosh. Swami Yogananda Paramhansa or Mr. Mukundlal Ghosh as he was called at the time went home and delivered that message to his own father Vibhuti Charan Ghosh. Pranabananda, thanks to his own spiritual talents and achievements, began gathering followers slowly but steadily. During his meditation, he had acquired several spiritual powers, including that of deciding when to pass on in this particular lifetime. His own followers constructed an ashram for Pranabananda on the foothills of Himalaya. Pranabananda, along with his followers, relocated to that ashram on the foothills of Himalaya. There, one day, he gathered all his followers, fed them a sumptuous meal, then gave them a spiritual discourse, and during that discourse told his most ardent disciple, Brother, I am going to kick the frame. That is, I am going to leave this mortal coil in the world and pass on to reach Lahiri Mahasaya and Baba Ji in the Himalayas. While the whole stunned followers and people along with disciples watched on horrified, Pranabananda left his own mortal coil and left for his heavenly and spiritual abode for good. This is one case history which tells us how one spiritually inclined person can gain his or her spiritual purpose thanks to his or her focus on his or her purpose, hard work, meditation, spiritual journey, and concentration on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This was probably the ambition of Pranabananda and many such spiritualists of his category in this material world. Just like we had discussed case histories on the material plane, now we are discussing the case histories of those who had a spiritual ambition, a ceaseless meditative industry, and a determination to succeed in his or her spiritual level of achievement. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular case history. Please give me your own expert opinions, thoughts, and ideas so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.